Hi guys, and welcome. Today we're going to be working on this rhinestone tumbler. I went to my friend Bree and I was like, hey, I really want like a watermelon ombre pattern, and she took my ideas and added her ideas and she made it super amazing. So make sure you join her group and you buy the pattern from her. I'm not going to record doing every single row. It would take like 3 hours. You don't want to watch a 3-hour video, and I don't even think the storage on my phone would allow me to upload a 3-hour video. So we're going to do the first few rows together. I'll show you some progress, and then we're going to do the last row together. Listen, it's just most important that you set the foundation in your first row. You want to make sure your rhinestones are even, straight, and snug, and if you can do that, then you could do this tumbler. Okay, so we'll do the first few rows together. If you are following along, make sure you spray paint your tumbler. You'll see how I did it here in a few minutes, but I just did an ombre from hot pink to just a neutral green, and we're gonna get started. Alright guys, so let's do this. To protect the integrity of the pattern, I cannot show you the whole thing because it would make it easily stolen. So it's going to be covered up for the whole video. So I'm starting out by putting liquid fusion in my syringe, and I'm putting a thin line around the rim of my tumbler. It's just so much easier for me to use these syringes rather than the original bottles that it came in. And I'm going to start applying my neon pink SS20 rhinestones along the whole rim. The secret is really to keep these straight and snug. You don't want any gaps in between any of your rhinestones because then it's going to mess up every row after this. So you really need to try your best to make sure your rhinestones are snug and perfect around your rim. And I'm using a mother tumbler, straight AF, and these rhinestones fit around it perfectly. You'll see here in a second that I didn't have any problem fitting in that last rhinestone, and if I did, I'd either force it into place or I would just evenly space the rest of my rhinestones. But I like to have them nice and snug. And we're going to let this first row dry for about 30 minutes. It's really important that you do so. We're going to put it on a flat surface upside down, and I like to take my little squeegee and push them all down. And if you're on a flat surface, this is going to ensure that they are all nice and straight, and I'm going to let it dry like that. If you don't let your first row dry, when you go to do your second row, it can kind of mess up your first row. So it's really important to just walk away from it for a little bit and keep it upside down on a flat surface. I will also look at it from this angle to make sure they are all flat on the rim, because sometimes they can move and not be flush with the tumbler. So now we're going to do our second row. The first 2 rows of this are strictly just pink, so I'm not making a line to follow on my tumbler until after this row. So now let's go in on our second row, and this is the honeycomb style. So these will all fit perfectly if you did your first row right. So as you can see now on the second row, each rhinestone is going in between the rhinestones on the first row. You can screenshot this and zoom in if you don't understand, but this is just called the honeycomb method versus the grid or scatter. So second row is done. Every row I push all of my rhinestones up and make sure they are all nice and snug and even and straight, and anytime I have to walk away or take a break, I put this upside down on my table so that none of the rhinestones slowly start to shift down. Alright, so now we need to make a line. I will say I should have done this with a pencil and not a pen, but now that we're throwing other colors into the mix, you want to make sure that you're starting your rows the same on every row, if that makes sense. So I made a line on my pattern and a line on my tumbler. So every row, I'm going to start on this line. And this row is pink with a few whites and blacks. I will say the specific pattern is forgiving. You know, these ombres and scatter ones, if you mess up a rhinestone, you're never going to be able to tell. So don't stress out too much. It's the geometric ones that you really have to be perfect, because if you're one rhinestone off, it will show. But this one, it doesn't matter if I put that black right there or one row over. So I am following my pattern the best that I can, but they do play tricks on my mind a little bit and I mess up. I also like to cross off my pattern as I go. All right, so they all fit nice and snug. I'm going to take my squeegee and push them all up. Now I'm going to do the rest of the rows that only have pink, black, and white. And then when I bring the green into the mix, I will start recording again. Look how pretty so far, though. Make sure you're base painting your tumbler to match your rhinestones so that you don't see any of the stainless steel through the rhinestones. All right, so now we're going to start throwing in our greens. So for the neon greens, I'm using neon green rhinestones, and for the darker greens, I'm using pear. Now this is where I started making my line with an X-Acto knife because you can barely see it, but in real life, I could see it very well. So now, this is where I'm going to start every single row. So this specific row starts with pear. So I'm placing that right on my line. And that's going to kind of set the base for this row so that I don't get confused. I always try and put that first stone on and then go from there. So let's take our liquid fusion, just a little dot, and we're going to place our pear. I also like to do this if I have to walk away. I'll try and just get the second row started with just one rhinestone so like I know where I left off, even though I made a line anyways. Don't ask what I'm doing right here. I was explaining something. All right, so let's cross that off, and now let's start our pink. I like to count, so this one had like maybe 7 pinks, so I did 7 pinks, and then I crossed that off on my pattern. Just take your time and cross off as you go. Usually every few stones I do, I'll stop, cross it off on my pattern, and then continue, just because I really get sidetracked so easily. And sometimes I work right to left because I'm weird like that. As long as you follow your pattern, guys, you will be okay. All right, so that was our first row, adding green into our tumbler. And once again, I am pushing all those rhinestones perfectly straight to the previous row. All right, now let's do the next row together. So that one started out with pink, and it was 3 pinks and then a neon green. So that's what I'm doing. And I'll cross it off on my pattern, and then I'll finish that whole row. All right, guys, so I made a little progress. Like I said, I wasn't going to record every single row because that'd be crazy. But this is where we are at so far, and I wanted to give you a little bit of a progress update. Here is a time lapse of me doing the next row, but like I said, we've already explained how to do this, so as long as you follow your pattern and you make a mark on where to start each row, you will be fine, I promise. Look how pretty! So let's push those all nice and snug together. And I am going to keep going until we get to about the last row, and I will record that part for you guys. Yep, here I am doing another row. So that one started with neon green. And like I said, if you lost your mark on where to start, it's really okay. Just make a new mark and try and get it back on track. I actually think that's what happened here. I think I didn't make my line long enough, and I was like, oh my gosh, where did I leave off? But I looked at the row before it, and that started with the darker green, so I was kind of able to visualize that for the next row. All right, let's do our last one. I like to do a little bit of a thicker layer of glue down here, so it is super strong. And I did go a little rogue. I was like, I don't need the pattern anymore. I got this. So I started kind of just placing my neon greens, referencing the rows before it. And this one was perfect. I will say sometimes when I do these patterns and these tumblers, they don't always go all the way to the bottom of the cup. And I'm like, if I fit another row, they're going to be like on the curve of the tumbler. But this one was absolutely perfect. Like, I didn't need another row, and it is pretty much right to the bottom of my tumbler. So I always get impatient at my last rows too. You're probably like, why aren't you going in a row? No, I need to do all the neon green, and then I need to do the pear, because in my mind, it's faster that way. And I know that doesn't make any sense, but that's just how I am. And once that's done, make sure they are all straight. I will take my finger, push them all into place, and then I will let it dry upside down for 48 hours. You cannot wash this for 48 hours. And after 48 hours, you can scrub it with Dawn dish soap, and that'll take off any excess glue or wax that's stuck to your rhinestones from your wax pen. And then you're good to sell it. Almost done, guys. All right, if you have any questions, please let me know. I've never done like a rhinestone tutorial, so if I confuse you at any part or you need like a more in-depth version, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to clean the bottom of that off with acetone so that it's just stainless steel, and this is the final result. So let me know what you guys think, and thank you.